The storm was something else that night. Not just a whisper of rain, not just a roll of thunder, no, it was a fury, a living beast thrashing against the cliffs as though the heavens themselves wanted her swallowed whole. Midnight pressed down like a suffocating weight, and the sky split open with jagged white claws of lightning that lit the world for only a heartbeat at a time. And in those flashes, you could see her, Elara Wynter. Barefoot. Broken. Bleeding. Her torn dress clung to her like a second skin, soaked with rain and streaked with mud as she stumbled through the black forest. Her breath came sharp, shallow, like knives tearing her lungs. Every gasp burned. Every step was a war between her will to live and her body's need to collapse. Behind her, the wolves howled. Not the kind of howl that comforted or belonged to kin. No. These were hunting howls, long, cruel, bloodthirsty. The sound rose and fell with a precision that told her they weren't just chasing. They were playing with her. Driving her deeper into the woods, hurting her like prey. They wanted her to feel the terror before they tasted her flesh. And oh, how she felt it. Her ankle throbbed, hot with pain, the skin torn open from a rock she hadn't seen in the dark. Each step was fire, but stopping was death. The rain hammered her, stung her eyes, blurred her vision until the trees looked like shadows reaching for her throat. Branches clawed her arms and tangled in her hair, but she pushed through, because what choice did she have? The storm outside mirrored the storm inside. Lightning cracked, and for that fleeting second of light, the world became a mirror of her rage, sharp, merciless, unstoppable. Inside her chest, deep in her bones, a fire pulsed. Not a gentle warmth. Not the kind of heat that comforted. No. This fire was wild. A silver flame, restless, hungry, begging to be free. She knew what it could do. She knew the destruction it carried. And still. It trembled inside her, clawing against her ribs, whispering that maybe this time, she should let it out. But fear held her tighter than any chain. Fear reminded her of the last time, of the screams, of the way her mother's eyes filled not with love but with horror. Fear told her she was a curse, a danger, a weapon that even those she loved would rather see dead. Her bare feet slipped in the mud, and she hit the ground hard, palms tearing open as stones cut into her skin. For a moment, she just lay there, the rain beating down, the forest spinning. She could taste the copper of her own blood on her lips. The wolves were closer now. She could hear them, paws pounding against wet soil, the growl of their hunger vibrating through the night. Elara dragged herself up, teeth clenched, heart a drum against her ribs. She pressed her hand against her ankle, wincing at the pain, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Not now. And then, another flash of lightning. The cliffs opened before her. A jagged drop into black nothingness. The storm wind whipped at her, pushing her forward, daring her to leap. Behind her, the wolves closed in. Their eyes glowed in the shadows, pairs of yellow fire dancing closer, sharper, hungrier. Trapped. Her heart pounded harder, faster, a frantic rhythm of survival. Her choices collapsed into two brutal paths: let the fire inside her break free and risk burning everything in its path, or throw herself into the abyss and pray the darkness was kinder than the ones who hunted her. Her voice broke into the night, fragile, shaking, a confession torn from her soul. Not again, they'll kill me if they know what I am. The storm swallowed her words, but she felt them burn in her chest. This was the moment. The knife's edge between life and death. Between hiding who she was and unleashing the very thing that made her hunted. She stood at the cliff's edge, body trembling, blood dripping, the rain washing away the evidence of her fight but not the fire that begged to consume her. And somewhere, deep inside, she knew, this night was only the beginning. This was not her end. This was the first step into something far bigger, far more dangerous than anything she could imagine. The wolves howled again, closer now, so close she could feel the vibration in the ground beneath her feet. Her story was about to ignite. And if you, listening right now, feel that fire in your chest too, then don't you dare walk away. Because Elara's journey isn't hers alone, it's yours. Her story is just beginning. And if you want to live it with her, if you want to step into the storm, into the fire, into the kind of love that can burn or save, then subscribe now to Sophie's Romance Collections, where every tale pulls you deeper into the fire of forbidden love. The forest should have been filled with noise. Wolves snarling, the storm ripping branches free, the ocean clawing at the cliffs below. But in the instant he appeared, all of it fell quiet. It wasn't silence born of peace. It was silence born of power. Kael Draven stepped from the shadows like a truth she hadn't been ready to face. The trees bent with the wind, rain streamed through the air in silver ribbons, but he stood untouched. A figure cut from something harder than flesh, carved by battles too cruel to name. The Alpha King of the Blackthorn Pack. Elara's chest seized as if her own heartbeat had betrayed her. She had heard the rumors whispered on nights when firelight flickered against trembling faces, the king who led with ferocity, the wolf who could break armies with a single command. She had never believed she would see him here, now, standing between her and the abyss. His eyes burned gold, but they weren't the clear, proud eyes of an untouched ruler. No. They carried weight. Scars not etched into his skin but into his soul. They flickered with recognition, and it stole her breath. Elara. Her name fell from his mouth like he had known it all his life. She stumbled back, mud slipping under her feet, the cliff yawning open at her heels. Her body screamed at her to run, to throw herself into the void if it meant freedom. Yet she froze, pinned by the sound of her name on his tongue. I've been waiting. The words struck like lightning. He hadn't asked who she was. He hadn't demanded an explanation. He already knew. The fire inside her coiled, restless. Her hands trembled as though her own secret might break free at the mere weight of his gaze. How could he know? How could this Alpha King, this man bound to duty, to a pack that would kill her without a second thought, look at her as though she was the very storm raging around them? The wolves behind her slowed, circling now instead of chasing, their growls rumbling low. They didn't dare cross the invisible line of his presence. Even predators knew better than to tempt the Alpha King. Her lips parted, the storm drowning out the fragile sound of her voice. You shouldn't be here. Kael didn't move closer, but his presence pressed against her, a weight she couldn't push off. His voice was rough, steady, like gravel dragged over fire. And yet, here I am. The storm hissed. The wolves retreated a step. The cliff wind screamed between them. She should have felt relief. He had stopped them from tearing her apart. But what stirred in her chest wasn't safety. It was conflict, sharp and merciless. His presence felt like both salvation and danger, like he could destroy her with the same hand that might save her. Her blood ran hot under her skin. Not from the chase. Not from the wound at her ankle. But from the pull that twisted her insides, binding her to the golden fire in his gaze. Her voice shook. You don't know what I am. His expression didn't change, though something in his jaw tightened. The rain caught in his dark hair, ran down his face, and still he looked at her like she was the only thing worth seeing. I know enough. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Enough? Enough to kill her? Enough to cage her? Enough to use her like the weapon the world believed she was? He stepped forward. Not a threat. Not a mercy. Something in between. The ground itself seemed to respond, the storm pausing in its violence as though it too waited for her answer. The distance between them was a battlefield of its own. One wrong word, one wrong breath, and the fire in her veins would ignite. Tell me, she whispered, though her voice trembled with something that wasn't just fear. Am I the curse they say I am, or the salvation you want me to be? Kael's gold eyes held hers. No hesitation. No easy promise. Only the weight of a man who carried both his kingdom and his scars on the same shoulders. That, he said softly, dangerously, is what I intend to find out. The wolves shifted behind her, restless, torn between hunger and dread. In a single movement, Kael turned his gaze toward them. His authority rippled through the night like thunder, and their bodies dropped low, ears flattened, as though the very bones inside them remembered who commanded the wild. But it wasn't over. One rogue lunged, desperate enough to risk everything. Elara's body flinched, her ankle giving out as teeth flashed in the dark. She braced for pain, for blood, for the fire inside her to break free and ruin everything. But it never came. A blur of movement. A sound like claws raking the air itself. And suddenly the rogue lay sprawled in the mud, throat exposed, chest heaving, but too broken to rise. Kael hadn't shifted. He hadn't needed to. His strength, even restrained, was absolute. Elara's knees buckled. Not from exhaustion. Not from fear. From the raw weight of the moment. The realization that he had saved her, and yet, she wasn't safe at all. The rain beat harder, masking the tears she couldn't hold back. Her chest shook as she tried to breathe, but her breath caught on a truth she couldn't unsee. This Alpha King, this man cloaked in scars and silence, might be the one to protect her from the world. Or the one the world had sent to end her. And for reasons she didn't want to name, for feelings she wasn't ready to admit, part of her feared the first far more than the second. Their eyes locked again. Gold against storm gray. A clash of trust and suspicion, attraction tangled with doubt. And in that gaze, the first thread of something dangerous, something forbidden, began to weave between them. The forest still held the storm in its grip, but for Elara Wynter, the real violence lived inside her chest. Her body trembled, not just from the cold rain or the open wounds she carried, but from the unbearable weight of memory pressing against her ribs. Standing before the Alpha King had ripped the scab from every wound she thought time might have dulled. The gold of his eyes had seen too much, and somehow, they had seen her. But who was she, really? Her throat tightened as the storm's roar faded into the deeper roar of her own past, pulling her back, dragging her into nights she wished she could bury. The scent of smoke came first, sharp and bitter, though no fire burned here. Memory made it real. She was once more a girl in her own pack's territory, standing before the sacred oak at the heart of their lands. Her hands were small, trembling, reaching out to touch the bark etched with prayers and vows of generations. She had meant no harm. She had meant only to belong. But the moment her skin brushed the trunk, it happened. The silver fire, unbidden, tore out of her like a scream too long caged. It raced up the bark in veins of white heat, splitting the wood, burning the prayers, devouring what had stood for centuries. Flames that should never have existed danced in her palms, alien and wild. She remembered her own cry, shrill and broken. She remembered falling to her knees, begging the fire to stop. She remembered the hands of her pack pulling her away, claws not in protection but in punishment. Claws had torn across her back that night. Not an enemy's claws. Her family's. Her own kin. She had carried those scars ever since, thin white lines that spoke louder than any words, unwanted, unworthy, unclaimed. Her breath caught now, standing in the storm, because she could still hear the voices. Cursed. Dangerous. She'll burn us all. And worst of all, her mother's silence. No protest. No defense. Only the slow turning away, the eyes that had once been soft with love now shuddered with fear. That moment had killed something in Elara. Not her body, not her spirit, that had survived against every cruelty. But it had killed her faith that she could be loved without condition. She had walked into exile with her back bleeding and her soul frozen. Frostbite of the heart. That was her truest wound, and no storm outside could match it. Now, Kael stood before her. His presence was fire of another kind, burning away the night, demanding she see herself reflected in his golden eyes. And he had seen something. He must have. Because when her power trembled beneath her skin, when sparks whispered against her fingers, he hadn't flinched. Not like the others. Not like the ones who had cast her out. But could she trust what she saw? Or was this another test, another cruel game where she would bear her wounds only to have them torn wider? Her thoughts spiraled, sharp and unrelenting. She wanted to hate the pull she felt toward him, the raw magnetism that drew her gaze to the lines of his jaw, the scars hidden beneath his clothes, the storm steadiness in his stance. She wanted to despise the way her heart beat differently when he was near, faster, harder, as though her body betrayed what her mind tried to deny. Because Kael Draven was no savior. He was a king. A ruler bound by blood and pack and law. His kingdom needed a Luna, a queen to stand beside him, to bear his mark and his heirs. And what was she? A castaway with fire in her veins and rejection carved into her skin. Unworthy by every measure the world demanded. The thought made her chest ache so violently she pressed a hand to it, as though she could hold herself together by sheer will. She wanted to turn from him. To flee again, into darkness, into solitude. At least in exile, the pain was predictable. At least in exile, she owed nothing to anyone and no one could betray her further. But her legs would not move. Something deeper than fear kept her rooted. A dangerous something. A whisper that maybe, just maybe, Kael's gaze wasn't just weighing her sins. Maybe it was weighing his own. Because she saw it too. When the lightning split the sky and lit his face, she caught it in his eyes, the fracture lines, the shadows of choices made in blood, the weariness of a man who bore the weight of lives too many to count. His scars were not only on his skin. They were in the way he carried himself, the way his voice cut like a blade dulled by grief. For a heartbeat, their wounds spoke to each other in silence. Hers said, I was cast away, unworthy. His said, I carry everything, and it is killing me. The fire inside her stirred again, restless. Not just the silver flame, but something else, something human. Hope. It was a fragile thing, sharp as glass, threatening to slice her open if she dared to touch it. But still it rose, unbidden. She hated it. She needed it. The storm beat down, trying to drag her back into despair, but Kael didn't move. He stood there, unyielding, the Alpha King whose very presence silenced the forest. And yet, in his eyes, she thought she saw the faintest question, could two broken things find a way to fit? Her mind reeled. The weight of her exile pressed harder. Every step she had taken since that night of fire and betrayal had been shaped by loneliness so deep it hollowed her out. She had learned to live without touch, without trust, without belonging. She had built walls high and thick, convincing herself she was safer behind them. But those walls had cracks now. And Kael was the storm testing every stone. Her heart clenched as memories bled one into the next. Nights spent under open skies, praying to gods that never answered. Days hiding from hunters who called her monster. The endless hunger for something as simple as a voice that said, "You are enough." Her voice shook as she whispered into the storm, not to him, not to herself, but to the ghosts of all that had been taken. I never asked for this fire. The words tasted of ash. Kael's gaze didn't waver. His jaw tightened, his breath a steady rhythm against the storm's chaos. He didn't pity her. He didn't recoil. He simply stood, as if her confession was not a weight to cast off but a truth to carry beside his own. And that frightened her more than the wolves had. Because if he did not fear her, if he did not hate her, what then? What excuse would she have to keep running? The silence stretched between them, heavy and sharp. Then the wolves shifted in the shadows, restless, pulling her back into the present. The storm held again, demanding decision. And still, Elara's soul bled with the truth of who she was. The cursed flame-bearer. The exile. The girl no one claimed. But in Kael's eyes, she saw something she hadn't dared to imagine. Not salvation. Not condemnation. Possibility. And that possibility, fragile as it was, cut her deeper than exile ever had. The forest changed the moment they crossed its threshold. The whispering woods did not welcome them, it observed. Branches arched high like ribcages of long-dead titans, their bark blackened by age, their leaves murmuring secrets no mortal tongue could translate. Every step stirred echoes that weren't theirs. The air was damp with the scent of moss and earth, but beneath it throbbed something older, something that tasted of blood, bone, and memory. Elara felt it in her skin before she felt it in her bones. The pull. A current invisible yet inescapable, dragging her deeper with each breath. Her heart pounded too loudly in her chest, every beat a warning she refused to heed. Kael walked at her side, his stride measured, his shoulders squared, as if by sheer will he could command the forest to respect his presence. Yet she saw it in him, the slight twitch in his jaw, the tension in his hand hovering near his blade. The Alpha King was wary. That alone unsettled her. Moonlight slipped through the canopy in fractured beams, cutting pale scars into the darkness. Then, she saw it. Stones rising from the earth, jagged and towering, their surfaces carved with runes that pulsed with faint silver glow. They formed a circle, as though the earth itself had birthed a sanctum for truths too dangerous to speak aloud. Her breath stilled. The stones sang to her. Not with words, but with vibration. Low, thrumming, steady, as if they recognized the fire in her veins. She wanted to step back, to refuse what she already knew was waiting. But her feet betrayed her. Drawn forward, as though chains had fastened to her ankles, she reached the nearest stone. Her hand hovered, trembling, then touched. The world tore open. Light speared her vision. Her lungs convulsed. She was no longer standing but falling, through centuries, through bloodlines, through fate itself. Wolves bowed in endless fields, their muzzles dipped to her flame. Flames, not gold or red but silver, consuming armies, swallowing battlefields whole. Screams rang against her skull, the cries of both enemies and kin. And there, always there, stood Kael. His figure unyielding, but never free. Chains coiled his wrists, iron links that bound him to her fire, dragging him closer even as he strained against them. His eyes burned gold, defiance and need colliding, yet the fire at her command tightened the links. Then came the voice. N. Her body convulsed. Her throat locked. She gasped as the vision shredded into darkness, collapsing onto the damp forest floor. Her palms scorched with phantom flame, though no fire burned there. The stones pulsed once more, then dimmed, retreating into silence as if satisfied their message had been delivered. She could not breathe. Chains. Wolves. Flames. His eyes. All of it pressed against her ribs, demanding she choose, demanding she carry a destiny she had never sought. Kael was at her side instantly, his hand steady against her arms, grounding her. His touch seared and soothed all at once, anchoring her to the present. But when her eyes rose to meet his, she saw the truth etched there. He had seen enough in her collapse, in her trembling. He knew something had passed through her, something not meant for ordinary wolves. What did you see? His voice was low, dangerous, a growl that rumbled like distant thunder. She wanted to lie. To lock it away. To protect herself from the weight of his judgment. But the prophecy clung to her tongue, and when she spoke, the words fractured her. A choice. You, me. Chains. Fire. Either I bind you, or I destroy you. Silence swallowed them. Not even the forest dared to speak. Kael's jaw hardened. His eyes darkened, their gold deepening to molten amber. He released her arms slowly, as if testing whether she would vanish without his touch. Then, he looked away, not out of dismissal, but to gather himself. She felt it. The battle waging inside him. The Alpha King against the man. Duty against instinct. My council already fears you, he said finally. His voice was stripped bare, quieter than she had ever heard it. They whisper that your fire is a curse. That you are the ruin of every law we stand on. They would see you gone before the moon wanes again. The words should have broken her. Should have pushed her back into exile where she belonged. Instead, they rooted her deeper into the soil of this cursed forest. Then let me go. Her voice was jagged, her chest heaving. If I am danger, if I am curse, release me now before the prophecy makes itself true. Kael turned then. His gaze locked onto hers with such ferocity she forgot to breathe. I cannot. Her lips parted, confusion tangling with fury. Why? If I may end you, why keep me near? His hand rose, hesitant, trembling not from weakness but from restraint. He brushed a strand of her damp hair back from her face, his fingers lingering against her skin like they couldn't help themselves. His eyes softened, not with weakness, but with something more dangerous. Truth. Because I would rather be bound by you than live unchained without you. The words pierced deeper than claws ever had. They set fire to every scar, every memory of rejection. She wanted to deny them, to push them away, to say he only thought he meant them. But the forest was listening. The stones were listening. And something in her heart betrayed her silence, fluttering in wild, reckless hope. Her doubt deepened. Not because she didn't believe him, but because she did. And if he believed her fire could bind him, if he believed she could be both ruin and salvation, then every step forward would carry the weight of prophecy. A weight that might kill them both. Yet in that moment, as his hand lingered against her cheek, Elara understood one truth she could not escape. The prophecy was not just about fire or chains. It was about choice. And Kael Draven had already chosen her. The moon rose swollen and merciless, pouring its cold light over the clearing like judgment incarnate. The blackthorn pack had gathered in full, their voices rising and falling in restless murmurs that carried the bite of suspicion. Every gaze was fixed on her, and though no chains bound her wrists, Elara felt shackled by the weight of their eyes. The circle had been drawn wide beneath the ancient oaks, a sacred place where truth was demanded and lies withered on the tongue. Torches burned around the perimeter, their flames bowing against the night wind, crackling like impatient whispers. The scent of smoke mixed with fur, sweat, and anger. It pressed heavy in her chest, each breath a struggle. She stood beside Kael, though even his shadow did not shield her. His shoulders were straight, his chin high, the very image of command. Yet his silence burned against her skin, and she wondered if it was steadiness, or hesitation. Then the first voice rose. Witch, a woman spat, her tone laced with venom. She brings fire where no fire should be. I saw it. The stones glow at her touch. That is not the gift of the moon, it is a curse. Another joined. Cursed blood. She'll lead us to ruin. Cast her out before she burns us all. The crowd echoed, voices weaving together, swelling, until the night trembled with the chant, Exile. 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 Elara's knees weakened. Their voices clawed into her skull like talons. She clenched her fists, willing her body to remain upright. She would not fall before them. She had already fallen once, years ago, when her own mother had turned away. Not again. Not here. Kael's hand twitched at his side, a silent war playing across his features. She felt his struggle, the alpha caught between duty and instinct, between his people's fear and the quiet pull between them. Then the air split. A howl rang from the edge of the clearing, dark and commanding. The pack fell to silence as a figure stepped into the torchlight. Darius Vex. Alpha of the Iron Fangs. His presence carried with it the weight of arrogance, his every step deliberate, his every breath a threat. Scars mapped his arms, trophies of battles he wore with pride. His eyes burned with challenge, not just for her, but for Kael. Draven. His voice rumbled low, mocking. I warned you. Shelter a snake, and it will sink its fangs into your heart. He turned his gaze to Elara, lips curling. Or perhaps you've grown too weak to see it. Kael's eyes narrowed, his body taut as a bowstring. You tread on sacred ground, Darius. Speak carefully. But Darius only laughed, the sound harsh against the night. Careful? When your counsel trembles? When your wolves chant for her blood? No, Kael. It is you who should tread carefully. You risk all for a woman with fire in her veins and lies in her eyes. Elara's chest constricted, shame and fury warring inside her. The crowd roared again, emboldened by Darius's words. Exile. Curse. Witch. The words cut sharper than any claw, flaying her open where all could see. And then the attack came. From the shadows at the forest's edge, rogues surged, feral wolves with hunger in their eyes and blood in their teeth. Chaos erupted. Torches toppled, fire spilling across the clearing as wolves clashed in snapping fury. Screams tore through the air, the metallic tang of blood saturating the night. Elara's breath froze in her throat. She saw claws slash, teeth sink, bodies fall. And inside her, the silver fire screamed to be released. Her palms burned, her vision fractured by light she could not contain. One breath, and she could end it, she could burn the rogues to ash, save them all. But children screamed in the chaos. Innocents stumbled too close. She saw their faces, wide with terror, and her fire recoiled, dragging her back. If she unleashed it, she would scorch them too. She held it back. Trembling, choking, breaking herself in two to keep the flame caged. Her body shook with the force of denial, silver sparks dancing against her skin before fizzling to nothing. Kael fought, his blade gleaming in the moonlight, his wolf snarling beneath his skin. Darius struck like a storm, tearing through rogues with ruthless precision. The clearing reeked of blood and fear, yet still the voices rose against her, louder than the clash of battle. This is her doing. She calls the rogues. She will destroy us. Elara's chest caved under the weight of it. The fire inside her roared, demanding release, demanding recognition. But the fear in their eyes bound her tighter than any chain. She would never be their savior. Only their monster. Her throat closed. Her vision blurred. She stepped back, away from the circle, away from Kael, away from all of it. Her voice cracked as she whispered into the chaos, though no one but the night heard her words. Better a ghost than a curse. And then she turned. Her body fled where her heart had already gone, into exile, into shadows, into the cold silence of a world that had never wanted her. The cave was no sanctuary, only a wound carved into the mountain, damp and hollow, its stone walls glistening where rain bled through unseen cracks. Outside, the storm raged with a fury that seemed almost deliberate, as though the heavens themselves had chosen to mirror the chaos within her. Wind howled against the jagged entrance, carrying with it the cold bite of rain and the far-off growl of thunder. Yet in that darkness, curled against the wall with her knees pressed to her chest, Elara tried to make herself small enough to vanish. Her body ached, her ankle raw from the chase, her palms still burning faintly where the silver fire had begged to be freed. But worse than the pain was the weight. The memory of their eyes, their voices chanting for her exile, Darius's sneer, Kael's silence. Every syllable gnawed at her ribs. She pressed her forehead against her knees, whispering into the damp air as if her words might dissolve there and never return. Better a ghost than a curse. The storm answered with a crack of lightning. She didn't hear him at first. The rain drowned the subtle rhythm of his approach, the cave masking the shift in air that came with his presence. But then the shadows shifted, and a figure filled the mouth of the cavern, broad shoulders blocking the storm, golden eyes burning even in the dark. Leaving without a word? Kael's voice carried low, roughened by rain and restraint. Her breath caught, her throat clamping tight. She had wanted silence, distance, the clean cut of departure. But there he was, storm dripping from his cloak, his chest rising and falling with a weight she could not name. She didn't look at him. Couldn't. Not when the ache in her chest threatened to shatter at the sight of him. I told you, she rasped, voice hoarse from the night. I am no one's salvation. Only their ruin. He stepped inside, water dripping from his boots, his scent, earth and steel, the faintest trace of pine, cutting through the damp. He crouched near her, close enough that the warmth of him pressed against her skin, yet not so close as to corner her. His hand, scarred and steady, reached for her ankle. She flinched. Don't. But his grip was gentle, commanding without force. He pushed back the torn fabric at her hem, eyes narrowing at the raw wound caked with dried blood and mud. Without a word, he unwrapped the leather strap from his wrist and dipped it into the trickle of water running down the cavern wall. He cleaned the wound with slow, careful strokes, each touch burning more than the gash itself. She should have pulled away. She should have told him to leave her broken. But the steadiness of his hands, the patience in every motion, unraveled her defenses thread by thread. "You should let me bleed," she whispered. "The pack would thank you for it." His jaw tightened. "I do not heal you for them." The fire he lit between them was not flame, but truth. She dared to look at him then, at the lines carved deep into his face by battles won and wars endured. And for the first time, she noticed the scars. Across his collarbone. Down his forearm. Faint ridges beneath his throat. Her gaze lingered, unspoken questions heavy in the air. He caught them. "My father," he said at last, his voice stripped raw. "The man they once called king before me. Betrayed his own blood to hold his crown. When I was a boy, I bore the price of his weakness. When I became a man, I bore the weight of undoing it." His fingers stilled against her skin. He looked up, meeting her eyes with the force of a vow. "These scars, they are the map of wars fought not for glory, but survival. Do you see them, Elara? Do you see me?" Her chest tightened, her lips parting around words she could not release. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her chilled skin, his voice dropping to a whisper that curled like smoke between them. "I see you. All of you. And I do not fear you." The cave seemed to still, even the storm's howl muted beneath the weight of his confession. His words cut deeper than any blade, not because they wounded, but because they reached the part of her no one had ever touched. Tears stung her eyes, hot against the cold of the cave. Her hand rose without thought, trembling as it brushed the scar across his collarbone. "If you saw all of me, you would run. Then show me." Her breath broke. She wanted to turn away, to shield him from the truth that had haunted her since the night everything was torn from her. But his gaze anchored her, unrelenting yet tender, giving her no room to hide. "My fire," her voice fractured. "It killed him. The only one who ever loved me before. My first love. It was an accident, but still, it was my hands, my flame. I watched the life leave his eyes, and I swore I would never touch that power again. Do you understand now? I am not afraid of them. I am afraid of myself." The confession hung heavy, raw, dripping with shame. She waited for him to recoil, to pull his hand away as others had, to let disgust harden his eyes. But Kael did not move. His thumb brushed lightly against her skin, grounding her, his gaze steady as if he had already known, already accepted. "Elara," he murmured, her name like a vow. "You are not the fire. You are the one who carries it. And I will not let you carry it alone." Her heart trembled, the words threatening to shatter every wall she had built. Her body leaned into his almost against her will, the distance between them thinning until only a breath remained. His hand slid up, cupping her jaw, tilting her face toward his. Her lips parted, her body aching with the pull of him. The air crackled with tension, heat rising from the small fire he had built in the corner of the cave, its glow painting his face in gold and shadow. But hesitation lingered like a ghost, cold and sharp. She saw it in his eyes, the war between desire and restraint, between instinct and honor. And she felt it in herself, the fear that if she let him cross that line, if she let him touch what no one else dared, her fire would betray her once more. So they hovered there, suspended in a moment that felt endless. Almost. Almost enough to bridge the chasm. Almost enough to set them both aflame. But not yet. The storm outside raged on, the thunder echoing their silence. And in that cave, two souls trembled on the edge of something far more dangerous than fire. The fire she unleashed devoured the forest behind her, turning night into a hell-lit dawn. Shadows fled before her silver blaze, yet the howls of pursuit were relentless. Wolves of the council, bound by loyalty to Kael's crown, but poisoned by fear, hunted her as though she were prey. Elara ran until her lungs tore, until her veins burned with exhaustion, until her body threatened to collapse beneath the weight of her rage and grief. Every step away from him felt like tearing bone from marrow, But betrayal had buried itself too deep. Kael's hesitation had spoken louder than words. She stumbled into the ravaged clearing, the earth still scorched from her flames. The air smelled of charred wood and death, and for the first time, she did not flinch at the destruction she had caused. Instead, she let the burn sink into her palms, silver fire still smoldering at her fingertips like a reminder of her curse. She whispered his name, bitter and broken, Kael, and the sound of it nearly unraveled her. Yet the hunt did not pause. Snapping twigs. A ripple of movement in the shadows. They came in waves, warriors she once dined beside, voices she once thought allies. Their eyes gleamed with judgment, with fear masquerading as righteousness. Witch. Monster. Cursed. The words lashed against her ears like whips. But something inside her shifted. Fear receded, giving way to a fury that felt older than her bones. She no longer ran. She stood. Flames licked up her arms, curling around her like armor, and for the first time she let them feel her power unbound. Wolves circled, snarled, lunged, yet her silver fire carved through the night with merciless clarity. Their teeth never touched her flesh. Their claws never drew her blood. The forest became a graveyard of glowing embers, their bodies retreating, broken but alive, for even in fury she could not finish them. When silence returned, she collapsed against the earth. Her heart pounded with loneliness sharper than any wound. Betrayal had hollowed her, but a voice inside whispered cruel truths: you are alone. You always will be. Even he will not choose you. Miles away, Kael stood at the council chamber's edge, staring into the smoke rising from the trees she had set ablaze. His chest was a battlefield of war cries and silence. He had not stopped them. He had let them call her monster. He had let them brand her enemy. And the look on her face when she realized his hesitation, that haunted him more than any scar. His fingers curled around the hilt of his blade, but no weapon could cut the truth that sliced through him: he had failed her. Night stretched on, endless and merciless. Elara wandered deeper into exile, hunted not by wolves now, but by memory. Every moment replayed, the kindness in Kael's eyes by the fire, the confession of scars, the near kiss that trembled between them. It all bled into ash. Trust was gone, leaving behind only fragments of a bond she had almost believed in. Still, the prophecy's words clawed at her mind. Bind him. Break him. Burn him. She feared them more now than ever, because the betrayal had unlocked a part of her she could no longer cage. The world holds its breath around them. Smoke still drifts like torn veils across the sky, ash falling onto Kael's shoulders as if the gods themselves marked him in judgment. His chest heaves, torn between crown and heart, but his voice is a low murmur, almost breaking under its own weight. They'll never forgive us. Elara stands before him, silver fire dancing along her skin in ghostly trails, her eyes burning with both fury and grief. She looks less like a woman and more like a storm-given flesh, dangerous, uncontainable, yet heartbreakingly human beneath the fire. Every line of her body is carved in defiance, yet her silence screams louder than any battle cry. She doesn't answer him, because the wound isn't his words, it's the hesitation that came before them. The night draws close around their stillness, the forest smoldering with the ruin of choices neither can undo. Their breaths mingle in the cold, sharp air, but trust lies shattered between them like glass that will cut no matter how carefully one tries to pick it up. His hand twitches as though he wants to reach her, to take back every moment he faltered, but hers closes into a fist of fire. If he touches her now, he risks being burned, not by flame, but by the truth that she may never belong to him again. The voice of the prophecy coils around them both, venomous and intimate: the one with silver fire will bind the Alpha King, or end his reign. Its echo lingers not as sound, but as thought, infecting every heartbeat, every breath. And the question rises like a howl in the listener's chest: would you have chosen her, or feared her too? Her exile is no longer just a punishment, it is a test. For Kael. For the pack. For us. Because her fire is not only hers. It is every outcast's fury, every scarred soul's defiance, every broken heart that still dares to beat. And so, I turn this to you. Yes, you who listen in the quiet dark, drawn into her flame. If her fire burned in you tonight, would you claim it as salvation, or condemn it as curse? Would you stand at her side, even as the world sharpened its claws against her, or would you step back as Kael once did, letting fear masquerade as reason? Because choice is coming. And when it does, neutrality will burn with the rest. If her fire seared your heart tonight, then do not walk away. Subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections, because here, we tell tales that scar, heal, and burn. Stories that do not fade, but linger like ash on your tongue, daring you to taste truth. Here, every heartbeat matters. And Elara's has only just begun. The war subsides, but not in victory, only in exhaustion. Wolves retreat into shadow, whispers coil tighter within the council, and the forest grows quiet in a way that is never safe, only waiting. The moon hangs low, pale and watching, as if even it fears what has been set into motion. Yet beneath the silence, the earth stirs. Tremors slither through the roots of ancient trees. Stones shift as though something beneath them turns in restless sleep. Far beyond the reach of their eyes, a voice awakens, its resonance crawling along the ground until it finds those attuned to hear. She is not the only one. The words echo through the marrow of the night, neither male nor female, but a force that bends air and shadow alike. The true Alpha has yet to rise. Kael hears it in his bones, the prophecy twisting into darker shapes than any council dared to speak aloud. His jaw tightens, gaze cutting toward Elara even as she walks ahead of him, her flames dimmed but never gone, her shoulders squared against a world that will not love her. He knows then that whatever enemy comes next will not be of rogues or rival alphas alone, it will be something older. Something that demands her fire. Something that demands his crown. Side by side, they step into the void of the forest. Not as king and exile, not yet as mates, but as fractured halves of a future neither fully understands. Flames flicker at their heels, tracing their path in trembling light, each spark both hope and warning. Behind them lies betrayal. Before them, doom yet unnamed. And so they walk, not towards safety, but into darkness. Not into peace, but into the storm. Her fire glows soft against his shadow, entwined in ways that defy prophecy, yet bind them tighter than chains. Together, they are a question the world has no answer for. This story is not done. The war has only drawn its first breath. The betrayal has only sharpened its teeth. And as the night swallows their forms whole, one truth remains certain: this isn't over.